Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Building Your Business right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest all the way from California, from a hotel room at the present moment, is Laura Davis. Why is she in a hotel room? Well, she's dealing with her parents' or grandparents' estate. And this is something we could actually touch on today. Why? Because she's a certified financial planner. And she says, earn, save, and spend. How do we do it? In which order? How do we prepare ourselves for aging? How do we prepare ourselves for everyday things? Things like COVID that come up and suddenly kind of hit your savings, or anything else that kind of comes up that you didn't actually know anything about, and even preparing for your death and whom you're leaving everything to. So she is a free-only certified financial planner. Her new book, which was inspired by years of working with clients to help them gain clarity and confidence around their money. Fiduciary financial advice is usually reserved for the very wealthy, and Laura wanted to write a book that would help middle-income Americans and anybody else in the world get the knowledge they need to do better with their money. So 8 years ago, she became a financial advisor. Prior to that, she had a brief stint as a recruiter. Before that, she was a real estate agent and sold foreclosures during the Great Recession. It was during this time that she started to become really interested in personal finance. She saw how flawed the financial discussions resulted in people losing their homes and their incomes. And this inspired her to help people better with their money and create better outcomes. We all need that. We have no idea, what next crisis is going to come along or anything else. And quite honestly, I mean, in America, if you haven't got medical coverage, you'd never know when something's going to come along like that and wipe your savings out. The thing is that today, so many people are just living from paycheck to paycheck. And you say, what, save? Plan for the future? I'm only surviving today. How can I do that? And there's also the relationship with money where I don't want to be ruled by money. I don't want money to dictate my life. And then others who are chasing the money think it's the all important thing. So, money is, it's
Fraught.
absolutely fraught. It's an enormous
It
question mark,
is.
really. It's a tool. It is a tool. It's
Yes.
a transaction. And our
Yes.
relationship with money is going to dictate in many aspects of our life, the relationship we're going to have with life itself, isn't it? Welcome to the
Yes.
show, hon.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you having me on. And you could not have introduced this topic better. Money is that piece of our lives that we can't avoid. You can't exit from the system, unfortunately. The best that you can do is to learn the system and manage within it.
Mhm.
So make the best decisions that you can based on the construct of your own life,
Mhm.
and trying to work as best as you can with what you're provided.
And I think the relationship with money right from the word go is to actually understand it is a tool, just like your car gets you around. Money
Yes.
gets you around, and it's the transaction that goes on between people in business and purchasing your groceries, your house, your clothing, your da 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 da. But we've given money so much power, and so
Well,
many
I think
people
that
have become a slave
yes,
to it.
yes, I think, and your point is so well taken. It is a tool, but unfortunately, most of us don't have control over the tool. It's
Which
almost
way do
like
we
a
hold
jack.
the hammer?
Right, I was about to say it's almost like those jackhammers, or it's like go 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 go, go, out
Hmm.
out, and
Hmm.
it's almost as if most of us don't have a good hold on the handles,
Yeah.
and we just let it go off by itself, tearing up the concrete willy nilly wherever it wants to go. So while at its core, money is just a tool. And I think what the problem that most of us run into is that we don't know how to control it,
No.
and utilize it as a tool that we can use to really pursue our values, our goals. And there is so much noise out there.
Yes.
It is very difficult. And to your point too, people are really struggling right now.
Yeah.
More Americans than ever are living paycheck to paycheck. In Canada and in the US, we're having this housing crisis where
Oof, major.
houses are completely unaffordable.
Right.
And here in the US, we do have a massive problem with our healthcare system, and it is incredibly expensive. I remember when I first became an adult and I had to go get insurance on my own. I've been self-employed for most of my adult life, and I'm 41 now. And my premiums for good insurance were about $95 a month. And this was back in 2005. And today, our premiums for our family of four are close to $1,400 a month for a catastrophic plan. And here in the US, in order to qualify for any subsidy at all, you have to be a family making under about $100,000 a year. So that does not leave any room for other things. Every
No.
dollar is being spent on necessities. So when people say, I don't have control because every dollar is used on necessities, how in the world can I make any progress at all in this environment? And it is very difficult. I don't want to minimize that.
No. You've got the one side of it where it's not enough and I'm worried about money all the time. Can I afford to pay? Then you've got the
Yes.
other side of it where people are making a shoot load of money and the money's become their identity. They've
Yes.
lost themselves. They've lost the reason why they're doing is that the more money they've got, the more power they think they have, but the more they
Yes.
lose themselves in it and they become so protective over the money, they don't realize they've become the slave to it. So we have those two extremes. How do we find that balance where we can make that money work for us? Because ultimately, when, both sides makes us a slave to the money in some form or other. How do
Yes.
we actually live a life where, we're not worrying about every penny, whether, who's going to touch my billions or can I afford to pay for the rent,
Yes. And these are really two different groups of people.
Mhm.
The billionaires and the what I think of as the decamillionaire class. I'm sure that at some point you've heard this phrase, eat the rich.
No, actually, no.
It
It
is
kind of sounds rather, like a horror
it
movie, but yeah.
it's it's a little barbaric.
Uh-huh.
And I think that it people more and more, the masses are getting more and more angry that there is this extraordinarily wealthy class.
Yes.
And their problems are very different. The people who I deal with in my practice when I'm coaching people one-on-one, when I'm managing their finances, um, they're wealthy, but they are more of that sort of mass affluent. So people who here in the States are earning 250,000 to maybe $400,000. And by the way, this statistic is something that most people don't really know, which is that half of all American households make less than 70,000 US dollars per year. So those people really are living very much paycheck to paycheck. If you think about how much you actually have to live on when average rent is $2,000, and when the medical expenses are so high, when college costs are so
Yes.
high, when a new car or even a used car is so expensive, you're thinking all of these.
Maintaining the used car
Yes,
suddenly is the
yes,
price of a new car.
right. Yes, exactly. It's a lot. So if you are part of that group of people, and again, it is half of us here. If you're part of that group, what the place where you can start, where you can do something today, is it, what I find is that people are very afraid to even look at where they are now.
Yeah.
So if you do one thing, if you're in that paycheck to paycheck, sort of feeling like you're just constantly, you're waiting for the next check to come in just to survive. One of the things that you can do is really take stock of where you are now. If you don't know exactly how much money is in your checking account, if you don't know exactly how much debt you have, um, those things are really important to get a good grasp on. And then the second thing is for all of us is to really get a good hold on your own values. So as we all know that we are bombarded with constant messaging about what our lives are supposed to look
Ugh.
like. You have this social media madness where it's like, you've got to have this fancy bag, you've got to have the fancy car, you need to go on these fancy vacations multiple times a year, or else you're just not making it, right? Or you need to
Right.
buy the fancy
You
shoes or
don't count.
whatever it is.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so really, if you can take a really good look and say, you know, I need to be able to separate what the world is telling me is important for me to have, be, and do,
Mhm.
and really understand what it is that you want to have, be, and do. What
Yes,
what is important for
it
you.
isn't about the price tag on you. It's about how enriched and abundant you are from the inside out, right?
Yes.
And when you're living life from the heart, from the soul, from the spirit, you're loving what you're doing, and it is benefiting somebody else. You truly are enriched. Now, that
Yes.
enrichment from the inside out doesn't always match the bank account, certainly not in my case.
No,
But
no, no,
because
it
actually, you're
doesn't.
talking about $100,000 being kind of the poverty line over there. I'm a pensioner and I
Yes.
make less than 22,000 a year.
And you're able to survive.
Well, the fees is high.
Right.
Survival,
Is a
yeah.
relative term.
Yeah.
It's a relative term. I mean, I think that you give such a wonderful description of it. I talk about this in my book too when we're discovering purpose. Um, it I think it is very difficult for people to discover their purpose
Mm,
and think on that higher plane when they are just managing barely to survive.
yeah. It's a
Um,
hard thing to do. Yeah.
it's really difficult, and I don't want to say it's impossible.
No.
But I also don't want to. There's a lot of shame around money. There's a lot of shame
Mm,
around not making it, right? Like, I don't know why I'm on this side of social media, but I am constantly getting bombarded with these sort of side hustle
mm,
ideas.
mm.
This like idea, and it's generally speaking younger, kind of attractive women, sometimes men, talking about real estate side hustles or these all the affiliate marketing, and there's all these
Yes.
sort of phrases, right? There's all these terms, and I'm not saying that those things can't be done, but I think the messaging has this underlying element of shame, which is that
Yeah.
if you can't figure out how to make $10,000 a month
Yeah.
starting next month in a side hustle,
Yes.
then there must be something wrong with you.
With you.
You must not
Exactly.
be smart. You must
Right.
have, you must not be a hard worker. You must not be brave, all of those things. And there is that shame, and
Absolutely.
so it's that idea that, like, if you're not making this much, then you need to feel bad about yourself. And I hate that. I wish that that wasn't the case.
Oh, I've been given that myself. I've been 10 years with my own network. I do everything by donation. And, we know the word donation, some people just completely and utterly cannot see the word at all, right? So
Right,
whether it's
right.
guest or whether it's listener, it's like, woo, over the head. But for me, for my soul consciousness, it has to be free will.
Yes.
You pay according to what you feel the show is giving you. And that's just my compass. But I have got flack left, right, and center from so many people I know that, mean well. But Sarah,
Mm,
you haven't made it unless you're making this amount of money.
mm.
And I said, I may be bank poor, right? But I am so soul enriched. And no, it doesn't put the roof over my head or anything else. I mean, most certainly I'd like to turn the volume up on the bank, most certainly. But I've been doing this 10 years, and I look at the caliber of people like yourself that I've had on with the enrichment of knowledge that empowers other people's lives. That's my measure of success.
Yes. And I think that if we could, as collectively as a
Mm.
society, have that mindset shift,
Yes.
that 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 your value,
Yeah.
your intrinsic value is not connected to the number in your bank account. It is not connected to how much money you earn. Money is is wonderful, and it is a great tool if you can use it correctly. It can also be used for evil, and I
As we've
think that
seen over and
we
over again. Yes.
absolutely, and so but to your point, to me, what your value is in this world, and I say this in my book when I'm talking about purpose, is is the value that you provide to others. A purpose cannot work to benefit you first. A purpose needs to help other people first. And that's exactly what you're doing, Sarah, with your podcast. And this is your purpose, and it is fulfilling
Exactly.
you in all these ways.
Well, that's the thing. When you feel enriched yourself by your
Mm,
purpose, your
yes.
cup runneth over. All right. And,
Yes.
and no amount of money can buy this feeling. No amount of money can buy this. It can support it. It
Yes.
can enhance it, but it can't
Yes.
buy it. And I love it whenever you see
No.
a disaster movie, the first person to go is the billionaire. You know, it doesn't matter how,
Oh,
or The Walking Dead or anything else like that. It's the rich that can, because they think that they can buy anything and anyone. But when it comes, even like COVID, right?
yes.
It would hit people who were immune weak, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it didn't matter. I mean, you will see this time and time again of people that die, this billionaire thinking they can buy that longevity. And it's like the person, rather like Buffett, he can make money in his sleep, but he gives 50% away all the time and he still lives in his old house, right?
Right. And drives his old car.
Exactly. And it's like for him, it's like, yes, I can make the money, but how can I make this money work for other people? And so I'm saying,
Yes.
go make a shootload of money. Get rich,
Yes.
but make sure
Yes.
you're seeding opportunities for other people because somebody else
Yes.
helped you get where you are.
Right. And that's why it's so important to get those values straight. I do want to go back to your billionaire dies first, because this story about the submersible, that everyone was talking about a couple of weeks ago when those
Mm,
5 people
yes,
died on there.
yes.
Um, it struck this note in sort of this commentary, this social commentary about, is it okay to be maybe not happy exactly, but maybe not sad that that happened,
Mm,
you know and this goes back to the eat the rich piece, Sarah, because
yes.
I think when I felt a little conflicted about it myself, because I'll be honest, part of me was like, they made a dumb decision. They used their money to do something that
Yeah.
was ego driven, and I'm not
You
really
would you would
bothered.
think with that money, they would have people to investigate the company to make sure they were doing everything right. Now, I'm sorry for the kid that
Me
died
too.
in there
Same.
because he actually didn't really want to
You
go.
didn't want to go. Right.
Right. And so,
Exactly. Yes.
kind of, oh, come on, kid, you'll love the experience. And it's like, it's sad that, but yes, it's just because money can buy it. It's like going up into space for 11 minutes. I remember when Captain Kirk did that, and he was interviewing, and for a person who was kind of known as the spaceman, and he was
Yes.
talking about that experience of being able to finally see the world from the top before they came back down. And he was interrupted by boss, who kind of went off on a different tangent. Here's
Yes.
somebody sharing his soul, that spirit of something that was such a huge impact on his life. They're finally seeing it, really the experience of seeing Earth from above, which how
Yeah.
many of us would love to have that experience? And instead, it came across with this other. And it's like
Right.
the typical billionaire approach to it, as opposed to the experience approach to it.
Right, right. Again, it doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
You've got to get a hold of those values
Yes.
outside of your ego. It's like,
The big ego.
right, there's some big egos out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I heard this very interesting take after the submersible thing happened, and people were going back and forth about whether you should feel bad about feeling happy that they died, that Schadenfreude.
Right.
And an ethicist said, it's a woman who, she has a PhD in ethics of all things, that's like, it's a social
Yeah.
studies kind of academia piece of things. And she said something along the lines of, it's neither unethical or immoral to feel happiness at the demise of your oppressors.
Mm.
And as someone who works in the finance world, I I exist in this weird space where I really believe that our systems work against the
Yes.
overwhelming majority of us,
Absolutely.
99.9% of us.
Absolutely.
And yet I know that if I if I publicly say, I don't think that billionaires should exist. I don't, I think, I think most people in financial services would think I was crazy.
Mm.
But we don't have the most, financial services itself is not the most ethical
Right.
industry in the
Exactly.
world. There's a lot of fraud. In the United States, only about 10% of us work in a fiduciary capacity. And a fiduciary means that I always have to put your interest ahead of my own.
Mm.
Um, and in the US, we are the only developed country that does not have a fiduciary standard for financial advice. So if you're out there getting advice from someone, it's probably a good idea to ask if they're a fiduciary. Otherwise, they're only held to what's called a suitability standard.
Mm.
And a suitability standard just means that I can sell you something that's suitable, even if I know that there's something better. And
Right.
I might be incentivized to sell you the suitable thing because it makes me more money, right?
It's all about the sale.
Yes, it's all about the sale.
Yes.
And we do a really terrible job of educating people on how they can get financial advice and and how they should look at things. I think people don't even know what questions to ask.
Yes. No, I mean, God, I mean, I've had many, many financial people on the show here and from all different type of backgrounds. But for me, I interview people who are literally coming from the heart that really want to help people, have
Yes.
better financial situations.
Yes.
But they're all different perspectives around it, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there is never one size fits all. You need to
No.
find that someone that's speaking your language, that you know that the intent is to serve you where you're
Yes.
at,
Yes.
right? Now,
Yeah.
I've got people say, look, just do this. And once you've got the money, I can help you do that. And my argument has always been I was involved with a technology that was absolutely brilliant. And everybody said, we'll invest in it once you've built it and got the patent. I said, but we need the money. We did build it because I put that money up there for that. But we needed the money for the patent and then for further testing. Oh, but once you've done
Right.
that, we'll invest. I said, but no, we need the
But I
investment
need the
now to
investment
do that.
now.
And I could
Right.
not believe, because, coming from where I'm coming from, which has always been that spiritual coach, I'm looking at these people and I'm going, you're playing at being an investor. But inside of you is a terrified little boy that's
Yes.
scared shootless of losing money, but losing face.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, and that is like classic, you need experience in order to get a job, but you need the job to get the experience,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So
And I just
so
don't get it.
yeah, yes,
I don't know
I
who
know
came
it.
around with that rationale. I just don't
I
get it.
I know it is a very difficult, you have to prove yourself, but how do you prove yourself before you've proven yourself?
Yes. Well,
It
this is
is
why you're seeing
confusing.
so many more people, solopreneurs, small
Yes.
businesses. It's like I'm not going to get ahead of the corporate world, especially if
Yeah.
I'm a woman or a person of any ethnic background,
Yes.
right? It's the rich man's club, and they've got that door firmly closed, and so you can go to a certain height, and then that's it, membership only, right? So you've
Yes.
got so many people who are going, Why am I slaving away for them?"
Right.
And
Right.
we are
Yes.
now seeing so many people now being that solopreneurs, small businesses, and saying, look, it's the same risk. I'm at no security being with the corporate, right?
Correct.
I
Because they
may as
don't,
well do
because
it for
there's no
me.
loyalty
No, they
there,
can kick
right?
you out at any time for
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
reason. Yes,
Right. And they don't care about you. And they're constantly telling you that you don't have a good work ethic because you're not working hard enough. You're not
yeah.
sacrificing enough for the company. There's no
What do
there's
you
no
mean you're only
room for.
working 23 hours a day? What about the 24th?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Well, and what about children?
Yes. Oh, no, you can't
They're
have kids. It
you
interrupts.
can't, right, exactly. They're, oh, you can't, it's impossible. Well, at least for women it is. For
Yes,
men, you look at a man who leaves early to go to his kid's recital, that man is an amazing father.
right,
The woman leaves early to go to her kid's recital and she's not a good worker, and she has one foot out the door.
right.
So, and we still do that. We still have that very much double standard. Even those of us who consider ourselves progressive and,
Mhm.
diversity and inclusion advocates, I think we still have that patriarchal mindset,
Yeah.
and you have to catch yourself, and
Yes.
and and not let
Well, I
that
mean,
overtake you.
I'm a huge one of looking at the system, and I have a book coming out, an anthology collaborative book coming out at the end of the year called the Forgotten Children series, and the people who are contributing are people who are working with children, and I firmly believe
Mm.
our dysfunctional adult society is because we've let the child down, right? And we take we
Interesting.
take the spirit of the child, we watch them in their wonderment of discovery, and we get all awe about it, and then we put them in a school institution that now says you've got to sit there and you've got to become this, and don't you be independent or individual. All right. And then
Right.
this child then kind of almost feels abandoned because the child that was in wonderment is being told what to be a wonderment about rather than the wonderment of what is making them wonder, right? So,
Right. And then they become an adult who has a very hard time finding their
yes,
own path,
exactly. The
and
path
this
of
all,
expectation. What do you mean? I don't fit into that.
right.
I don't
Yeah,
belong there. Yeah.
right. And I can't be the best, I can't be in service
Yes.
to my community in the best way possible if I'm not allowed to explore that.
Yeah.
This is all going back to purpose and helping our kids
Yes.
realize what that means. When so I'm a career changer. I only started in this business about 8 years ago, and I came from a brief stint as a recruiter, and then prior to that, as you said, I sold foreclosures during the recession, and so I worked directly with banks, and I had to do sort of grody things like
Mm.
evict people
Uh,
and clean out houses that had had lots and lots of drug use or homeless people living there, and things that were more difficult to see. Um, but I did start getting interested in personal finance then, because I could see how one decision made would
yes.
could really affect someone's life in this negative way. Um, so, but I didn't know what I really wanted to
Right.
do.
You
And
had to
and so I went
discover.
on I went on this whole
Yes.
self-discovery
Yes.
mission, and I read books, and I just sat there thinking and writing things down and, trying to figure it out. And all that work culminated in this singular moment for me where I all of a sudden thought, oh my God, like I'm a financial planner. Like
Mm.
this is what I've been doing. And one of the biggest things, so I finally figured out that there was such a thing as a certified financial planner. And a certified financial planner is someone who deals with all aspects of financial planning, personal finance. So we're more holistic in the way that we approach things. We don't just manage money, we very much incorporate your your goals and things like insurance and estate planning and other stuff. So I had this aha moment that, because going back to what you mentioned earlier, what comes out of you intrinsically,
Mm.
right? And what I was just doing anyway in my spare time was I was, looking at retirement calculators online. I was the person who my friends would call if they had
Mm.
questions about their 401ks. I was the one who was questioning my insurance agent every step of the way, saying, does this really make sense for me? Does this make sense in terms of my broader financial picture? How can we do this better? And when I discovered that, it was like this light bulb went off.
Yeah.
And so, sort of like you, what you're describing is your
Mm.
experience of having this podcast and of working and talking with people. That's the experience that I get when I'm talking with clients.
Right.
You know, I
But
because
the
I
experience that you had before with the horrific thing of having to evict people. Now you imagine when they first bought that house, this is their home. And then, 2008 crash come along, which is no fault of
yes,
their own. This is the
no,
central banks, and there's a hell of a lot of problem with the central banks and their decision making. It was the top end bad financial decision that the lower end paid for. Right. So
yes,
suddenly they lose
absolutely,
their home. Are they ever going to have a home again? Can they even afford to rent? No, they're walking away from their dream. Right. And
yes,
they are not the failure. The system failed them. But you
absolutely.
going through that experience, had you not gone through that, it wouldn't have made you such a holistic planner in the first place.
No, and I also don't think that I would have had empathy
Yeah.
for people who traditionally don't fit into the client profile of a financial advisor, right? Even those of us who are fee only, our fees, even if we don't have asset minimums, our fees are high enough to where a very small percentage of the population can afford us. And so there's not people who are in my position who are working with people on that lower or even the
Yeah.
middle end of
Yeah.
the spectrum, because
Well, that's how the
we
rich continue to be rich because people are managing their money.
that's
People
right.
who need the management of the money can't afford the services
Right,
that help them manage it. Back
right,
to the imbalance
yes.
again. Yeah.
Well, and I also, so this is also what I'm really interested in doing for this world is that for people's personal finances. This is the one thing, by the way, Sarah, that I'm actually good at. I'm really good at what I do. I'm not that great at anything else, but this
Mm.
is where I'm really truly passionate. I'm like, I'm an okay mom, like I'm in a local choir, I sing okay, but this is where I really shine. Um, but I think that I think it is a myth that it is so overly complicated that you actually, as a middle income person, that you really do need someone else doing things for you. Our industry has perpetuated that idea because um, we benefit if you feel like you can't do things yourself, right?
Exactly.
Because then you have to pay us to do it for you.
Right.
And in my experience, people who don't have overly complex financial situations, who maybe have they're maybe employed, they maybe have a mortgage, um, and maybe they have a kid or two, they probably can do it themselves. It does take a little bit of effort, it takes self-education, but for most people, I think it's worth it to know the system so that they can do a good job managing their own money. Because the only people who they can afford to hire are people who are selling them products that they likely didn't need in the first
Exactly.
place.
I kind of draw an analogy to that to web designers. I have had so many web designers design for me that has not been bought out in the way I wanted it, or I can't use it,
Mm,
or they shut you out, right?
yes,
So
yes.
a little less common now because we can go in and protect ourselves. But I've still had that. A couple of years ago, I had somebody design a site for me, and then he held me ransom to get more money, right? But
Oh,
with what I see you doing is that it would be an initial investment for someone to go in and get to learn what they need to know. And then they can quote, quote, manage their own site because they know what they're doing. One of the
yes,
problems with a lot of the financial people, they make it so highfalutin and complex
yes,
that the regular person
yes.
goes, Are you speaking English?"
Right, exactly. And again, there's a reason for that. And the reason is so that they can continue to draw you in and say
Yes, like a
I'm so much
psychiatrist,
smarter
keep
than
you
you.
sick
Right.
because you're coming back.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a big therapy person, by the way. Like we do go see our therapist,
You
and
Yes,
it's
but if it
have to check
empowers
in.
you to do things on your own, not keep you
Yes.
crippled so you keep going back, right? Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's not like you're going back to get the that hit, that
Mm,
hit, and they keep
yes.
on bringing you in more
Yeah.
and more, like with the
Dependency, right? It's
yes, yes,
empowerment, yes, but not
yes,
dependency. Yes.
correct. And I just my mission in this in what I do is to give people that sense of personal
Yeah.
power,
Yeah.
and I think that once they have that base level of knowledge, they if they ever seek financial advice in the future from a professional, at least they know what questions to ask. At
Exactly.
least they know the context. At least they have power over their own money. They have power over that tool. They're not going to just like leave it running and let it go off to destroy something.
But they
The
mean that they've earned the money, they should have the power over it. I
absolutely
mean,
they
we,
should.
we were
Yes.
talking before the show, as you're in California right now because you're dealing with your father-in-law's or grandfather-in-law, is it,
Yes.
estate, and
Yes.
cleaning out the house and dealing with everything else and all of that, and it can be long
Yeah.
and tedious and everything else. When somebody actually hasn't left any instructions or a will,
Yes.
it's then going to be held up for a long time while all the legalities and everything go through as to who's going to and all of that. And then you've got to kind of get in there. And then suddenly you find there's a bill from here and there's a bill from there. Well, is it a valid bill? When my dad died, 3 days after he died, a bill arrived that apparently he bought on the day he died, or the day after he died, some several £1,000s worth of clothing. Now
Oh,
I went shopping with my dad. My dad was very kind of tweed jacket, comfy pants and shirt, that
oh
that
no.
and
And
he
his age, that generation would never,
right, exactly. And we looked at the type of things that he supposedly bought. And they're hoping at that time that a widow is just too stressed
distraught.
out or distraught, or that she'll
Yes.
hand it over to someone else, pay that bill without questioning it, which I think is the lowest of the low, right? And
Absolutely.
and the
Mm,
thing is, if we do, and I was saying that my ex mother and father-in-law were Chinese, and they would not write a will because they believed that if you did a will, that was inviting death. And so they had
yeah.
so many kids, and then the estate
Oh,
went kind of, it was,
oh, it's a
and
nightmare.
finding jewelry hiding in the drawer and finding this and finding that, right? And it's like none of the clarity. Um,
Right.
I'm an
Yeah.
executor of my friend's estate who's 90, but I've been living with her for a while. So, but still trying to kind of like, let's put everything in one folder so I know where it is and not like in
Yes.
20 million folders. And it's like, just as much as you want to manage your money while you're living, if you've got people that are coming after you, you want to leave, whether you're leaving them money or leaving them instructions of something, you want to make
Yes.
sure that the ducks are in a row, so to speak,
That's right. I always say that the most loving thing that you can do for your family is to give them a way to deal with you and your things and your wishes after you're gone.
An easy closure.
Um, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And because no matter how well you prepare, your family will be grieving for you, at
Yes.
least if they liked you, you
Yes.
know.
We hope they're grieving for
Right, we
you.
hope they're grieving, but they're gonna be dealing with so much emotion. So, and again, part of this idea of holistic financial planning is to make sure that you understand how you're incorporating that estate plan with your financial situation now. And I can't give financial advice, but I will say this to your listeners is that it does estate planning often sounds like this thing that only rich people need to
Right.
do. You know, only rich people need an estate plan. If you are over 18, you need an estate plan, and it doesn't have to be complicated, it
Yes.
doesn't have to be expensive. But the reason why is so that if something were to happen to you, you know, a will directs where things go should you pass away, so it names people to have them. um, you need a power of attorney, someone
Yes.
who can take care of your affairs if you're incapacitated and not
Right.
able to. And you also need an advanced healthcare directive. And this is called some slightly different things in different states and different places, but it basically helps medical professionals um, determine what to do if you can't tell
Tell
them what
them.
to do.
Yeah.
And this happens so frequently, and people just ignore it, you know, because if you're not fully dead, and I know this
Yeah.
sounds terribly insensitive, but if you're not fully dead but someone has to make decisions on your behalf and you haven't done that document, and this can happen to you at any age, this isn't
Yes.
just for old people.
No.
And if you don't have that document, you are putting your loved ones in a world of hurt because they won't be able to help you.
Right.
And they won't be able to do the things for you that you would have wished.
Right.
And
Because they
and
don't know
on
what your wishes are. As
No,
simple as
right,
that. I kind
right.
of
So
put
on,
it in alignment to,
yes.
people with dementia. I've done a number of shows on that. And there was one beautiful woman, Anne Bird, who was a nurse, a dementia nurse, and then she left to become the dimensional planner. So when people
Mm,
are diagnosed with it, while they're still cognitive, of choosing where they're going to go at what time,
yeah,
having their things in order, making sure so that the peace of mind is they may not remember with Alzheimer's or dementia, when you put them somewhere, they're not going to remember the decision making or even where they are. But the people that your loved ones don't feel they're institutionalizing you. This was a choice you made. You put
right.
everything in order so that, because no, you're not dead,
Yes,
but you're also not cognitively living. And so
that's
you don't
right.
want that burden to be on your family. And this is a way, even people who are going through cancer or going through this and that, you don't know the outcome. With positive thinking and doing everything right, yes, you'll come out of it, but one doesn't know. And so you
That's
don't want the
right.
burden. You want to
No.
get everything sorted out. Um, and even at the beginning of the diagnosis, I know it's extremely hard, but that's the
Mm,
time to go, okay, I need to, while I can, plan
yes,
for my recovery, my
yes,
finances, my this and that, my family. Because if
yes.
I don't, I'm not going to be in the right state of mind for it. And somebody else may go make those decisions that I don't like.
Right. Or and if you have children too, I mean, this
Yes.
is even more important. But the state will decide for you what
Yes.
happens.
And
And
God,
I
we don't
don't
want
think
them deciding.
anyone
No,
wants that to
no.
happen. So it really, I can't emphasize the importance of this enough. Those three documents, the will, the advanced healthcare directive, and the power of attorney. And if you have minor children, you also need a trust
Yes.
that will go into place to take care of them financially as they before they reach majority or whenever it is that you would like them to have access to money. But
I mean, I know
there,
many people who have children that are autistic or Down syndrome or this or
mm,
that. So, that means that you're looking at a lifetime of
yes,
support for that child. And that's, the
yes,
other kids you hope are going to grow up and be out on their own, but this child
mhm,
is going to need that continual support long after you're gone.
right. Yeah, so
So
you need something called a special needs trust if that is your particular scenario that will help facilitate that care, not only financially, but also sort of technically and emotionally and medically for the rest of their life. And you need to, you need to have people who you trust who are there in those positions of guardians and trustees
yes,
and people who are making those decisions. But it is vitally important that you have those things in place. Also, I have this other idea that I always tell people, and I have like a spreadsheet, and it's not a great spreadsheet, but um, I don't know if you experience this, Sarah, but when someone passes away, and even if they have those documents that I just listed, all that is together, there's a whole other list of things, like you said, with bills. So
mm,
like who's your electric company?
yeah, mm,
Who's your kid's pediatrician? Who is like if you have a cleaner, like what is
mm,
their name and contact information? Um, all like who do you pay your insurance to? Who's your homeowner's insurance with? Those kinds of things. If you also just have a list of those things that people would need to know. I make a list like this for my parents every time that my husband and I leave our children with them, which we did this week to come out here and work through these issues. And I make a list and I say, here are all the things that you would need to know. Here's the numbers for their school. Here's their
yeah,
friends' parents' numbers. Here's this, here's that, to make sure that it would be if the worst happened, which it doesn't usually, but sometimes it
it
does, and we
does.
don't know and we don't have control over that. But so that I would make their life so much
The
easier.
transition. I mean,
Yes.
we've got to understand that should you have an accident, the God forbid, the
Mm,
end is there, that they're in grief, they're in all that emotion. So the
yeah.
more all those other things are
Yes.
rationally, logically are there, and they
Mm,
haven't got to chase for it. Well, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, and that
right.
that just adds to the
Right.
stress. And it's like,
It
you know,
really does.
who's this and who's that? Okay, it's in the list, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not that, although I absolutely see that logics, I mm, have not been that kind of person to do the list. But in running this business and everything else, I now, have the Word document with all my simple things of my links and my passwords and my this and
Yes.
that, so that
Yes.
something
Your
goes on.
passwords. That's the other
Exactly.
thing.
It's like to
Yes.
get into that and to, what my financial banks are, so you can get into the account and all of that. So,
Yes, yes. A
it's
list of the bank accounts,
yes,
so important. A
yeah,
list of all of your financial accounts, where they are. You don't have to put amounts, you don't have to
yeah,
put account numbers, but
right,
as long as you have all of the institutions listed
yeah,
and the type of account, I just can't even tell you how much of an easing of a burden that is, especially for people who are maybe in your parents' generation, so that the greatest generation, the people who came before the baby boomers, they're in general they are so private,
yes,
um, and that privacy makes things much more difficult when you're trying to either transition them into assisted care or
mhm,
when they pass away and everything has been very hidden and they don't want to share because they don't want to burden.
yeah,
But the biggest burden that you can give to people is non-transparency.
yes. Exactly. And like I have a sister that's 82, my brother's be turning 74 this year. And and I'm a younger baby
You're
boomer, so I
younger.
was at the
Mm-hmm.
younger the side of it. And we were looking at those baby boomers that were the product of the generation you were talking about, where things were very, very private. But the other thing is they think they have everything in order, but they're not up to
Yes.
date with the latest needs or I mean, let's face it, things are constantly being updated digitally and this and that, and where they used to have a little bank book there, now they got to do it online. What do you mean? I'm 90. I live with a 90-year-old. There
Right.
is no way she's doing anything online,
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, and they save everything. We were looking through things yesterday here, and my husband's grandfather was 96 when he passed away, and I mean, they kept everything. You know how like when your credit card expires and
Yes.
you cut it up and you put it in the trash or you shred it or you do what, you get rid of it. Well, they have every single credit card since 1968 in a box. Like,
They're a collector's thing now,
right. They're like,
right?
yes, they're keeping everything. So it's just such a different mindset and a
Yes.
different generation. And yeah, that sort of
Well, they went through the generation of lack or unsure.
yes.
So you
Yeah.
held on to things in case,
In
always in
case.
case. And then
Always in case.
and then we're in, like especially kind of the 80s. I mean, I'm a 70s chick. That was my decade. I
Yes.
was born in the 50s, but the 70s was my adult thing. And we were about, non-institution, non-control. We were about free will. We were about expressing and exploring ourselves. And then
Yes.
the 80s came in, which was very bubblegummy, right? And then the 90s kind of going kind of dark in many ways, of that back to the discovery of needing
Right.
more substance. But then we seem to go into that financial thing where more is more, rather than less is more, right?
Right. Yes.
We're turning
Yes.
back now to the less is more,
Yeah.
because
And yes.
because we're realizing there's a massive divide between those that have more and those that have less. But what we're finding, and especially have millennial kids, is they've decided not to have children or not to buy a house or not to do this and not to do that because they don't want to put that burden upon themselves. Right.
Right.
So they're looking at
Yes.
their finances, they're looking at their future in a very, very different way out of necessity, because this whole thing of, as you said in the beginning, probably social media changed everything, right? When
Yes.
you've got things like the Kardashians, et cetera, housewives, all of that,
It
where
normalizes
it
it. Whereas,
normalizes, which is no,
yeah,
ma'am. No.
right. Well, because like, when you were growing, when you had your 70s heyday, it's not like there weren't tabloids. It's not like you didn't see sort of this rich and famous kind of lifestyle. What social media has done, it has normalized the idea that we should all
Oh, I would love
have
to have
our
that.
Louis
Mm,
Vuitton bag,
yes.
right? That we should all be like able to have that family vacation to Disney World,
Yeah.
which or or
Or
go
afford to
to
buy a butt.
right or afford to
Yeah.
buy a boat. Oh my
No, a
gosh.
butt, not a boat, a
Oh,
butt.
oh.
How many people are getting body implants because somebody has made it popular, right? And it's
Yes,
like,
yes,
no, no,
yes,
no, we're asking you for the essence
yes,
of you to come out. That's where your true enrichment is. And you're
yes,
believing that by remanufacturing your body and your state of being is going to make you
yes,
fulfilled, right? Because
right.
that illusion, and look, when you look at every single one of them and take away the veil, they're all human like us. They've all got problems. They've all been divorced. They've all had everything else going on. They may be rich, but they've also
Yes,
now become a victim of that
yeah,
riches, because
yes.
people are so fickle. They'll put you
Mm.
up on a pedestal, but the moment something happens in your life they don't like, they're going to tear you down very, very
Right.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why you just have to have such a good handle on what is really important to you.
Yes.
And it's okay if something is important. Like I don't judge people's spending decisions. If it to me, it really is okay if, you want to buy that fancy pair of shoes,
Mm.
if you want to do your Botox, if you want to like if you want
But
to
why?
spend a bunch of money on a gym or
Yeah.
whatever, if
Yeah.
you can afford it, okay.
If you can afford it, but also, are you doing it to look
For
for
other
other people's
people, yes,
approval? All right.
right,
Is it your self-value you're doing that you're enhancing, Or are
Yeah.
you doing it to look for the outside value?
Right, exactly. And that is the thing that you have to discover within
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
I like personally, I like to have people over to my house and I like my house to look a certain way because it just makes me feel good. When the
But
bed is made,
that's the presentation of you. It's the essence of
yes,
you,
yes,
right? Right?
yeah. And so maybe in someone's mind that would be shallow. In my mind, it's like, no, I just like I'm not doing it because I want other people to say or react or something in a certain
It's what
way.
you're
It's
comfortable
because
with
it's
presenting.
important to me.
Yes,
But
yes,
again, like I think so it's not like you said, it's not necessarily this is why you really have to do that soul searching to
yeah,
figure out what it is that's meaningful to you. And if it happens to be something that's showy, okay. And just but always question, like, am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing it because I think that society wants me to? I think someone else is wanting me to. I'm looking for a reaction.
yes.
Um, and we
Or I'm,
really, yeah,
emotional. How many people
yes,
emotionally shop? I'm
yes,
feeling less than, I'm feeling
yes,
stressed, and what am I going to do? I'm going to
yes,
buy something to make me feel better.
right. And
And then it
inevitably,
doesn't
you'll
make you
just
feel
feel
better. It goes off
worse.
in a drawer somewhere, and then you go
That's
and buy
right.
something else. And it's like,
Right.
no,
And
no,
then you're like, shoot, and now
yeah,
my money's gone too. And
yes.
so then
Ooh,
you
God,
feel
is that
it's
the
like
Visa bill?
right. It's
Yeah.
exactly, it's a shame spiral.
Yes,
So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, these are all difficult issues, but I just think that, the way that you're thinking about things, Sarah, and the way that we're talking about them now, that money mindset, that really understanding of who you are personally, like no rules of thumb,
right.
no one size fits all solutions. You've got to discover it for yourself, and
Yes.
then you have to give yourself the education to help you be successful within the context of your own life.
We all need breath. We all need
Yes,
oxygen.
yes,
Equally, we all need money as human beings to live. It's
yes,
a matter of
yes,
fact, right?
yes,
We have to decide how much is enough.
yes.
And
Oh,
we
enough.
and we also
That's
have
a
to
tough
decide
concept.
how we're going to earn it. How much are we going to cost of ourselves in the earning of it? Or
Yes.
how much can we look at ourselves? I've earned at that in an ethical way that I feel comfortable with.
Yes. And it is difficult because this is one of those, like, I don't want to judge someone for the way that they're earning their money. On the other hand, I wish that we could all earn money by providing real value, not
Consciously.
by
Yes.
consciously,
Yeah.
not by putting more product into the world that's going to clog our landfills,
Yes.
not by exploiting other people in order to get what we want, not by cheating the system.
Yeah.
And I have confidence that is possible, that it is very possible. And you're doing it,
Mhm.
you know, I'm doing it. I think
Just needing to
we're
reevaluate,
yes,
right? I
yes,
mean,
yeah.
you have a past president that everybody thought was rich, so therefore he must be right. But we look at all the bankruptcy, and we look at all the people that he cheated, and we look at the corruption and everything else. And for him, that was okay. That's a true narcissist, by the way. Anybody
Oh,
that when
yes,
they empower themselves at everybody else's expense is true
yes,
narcissism. And but
yes.
people, oh, he was rich, he's popular, he's been on TV, this and that, so he must be. And this is where we have to stop and take a breath and go, okay, let's reverse that now. Let's rewind the wheel. How did he make his money? Did other people benefit from it? Right? And whom is it serving? And if you look at that bottom line and the way they treat it, well, if they can treat people like that to make their money, how are they going to represent you in the country?
Well, and this is what is so this is what's so difficult about human nature.
Mhm.
Because I feel like a lot of the time we are inherently self-destructive.
Oh God,
And I
yes.
have a story about, I have a very quick story about our former president. And so we have friends who lived close to his course in New Jersey, and one of their friends was an arborist and did a whole bunch of tree work for Trump, $80,000 worth of tree work, and they never paid them.
Of course
Then
not. That was his trend.
and this was his thing, right?
Yes.
Like, and everybody says like you don't get paid if you do a job for him.
Yes.
And this friend of theirs said, well, yes, of course I didn't pursue it because he has an army of lawyers,
Yeah.
and it wasn't going to be worth it.
Which
And
is what they count on.
right.
Uh-huh.
And this was this so why would he have done the job in the first place is
Right.
was my question. But the real kicker of this story is that that guy, the arborist, still voted for Trump.
What?
Even with, yes,
I know
yes,
this is I'm okay, all right.
I
I'm
right,
not in that world.
but it's not so different from the people who vote for him who benefit from government programs,
Mm.
who benefit from from democratic policies, right? It's despite the fact that he that that's and I'm not even just going to use him, but despite the fact that someone will actively do things that cause your life to be worse than it would otherwise be, and certainly don't help, we still somehow ignore that in the face of this idea that, oh well, they're a good business person, they're wealthy, they have this
They
power and
must
this
be, yeah.
cachet. And we place those things over,
Common sense.
is that person a good person?
Right.
Like do they care about others? Do they put other people ahead of themselves? And why we want leaders who put themselves over others, it will boggles my
Yeah,
mind.
I know.
It's
We,
a
we've
really,
we've one thing we forget is they're actually civil servants.
yes,
That we pay them to serve us.
yes,
So if they're
correct.
self-serving at the
Hmm.
expense of us, why are we putting them in power? But that is the same thing for any of those industries out there. And they what
Yes,
I call them the ivory towers. They're up in the
yes,
ivory tower with their little gold toilets and everything else, and they're so far removed from the basement and the foundation and
yes,
the abuse of the people that are in that foundation. They don't realize that without those people, the foundation will crumble and they will tumble, right? But
yes.
they are so up in the clouds in their own ego and illusion, they don't realize that if you don't maintain the foundation, at some point it's going to crumble because they think they're now indestructible.
But Sarah, don't you think that for all the evidence that's out there that their foundation should have crumbled already, and yet we are still sort of half divided in
We,
supporting that kind of
I
person?
think it's just people because they need a job. I mean,
Mm.
you've got this, what is that TV show about undercover boss,
Oh
right? So
yeah,
the boss
yeah.
goes undercover and he's working with people in that foundational level, and it's a wake-up call for them, right?
Hmm.
And they aren't unhappy. They are that, but like, where are the other jobs? They're so scared of not being able to put food on the table, and they don't
Yeah.
know where the other jobs are, or their own self-esteem and value is not high enough for them to say, this is enough, I'm
Mm.
going to move on, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I say this, that if you walk into a building and you're going to go see the CEO and the place is dirty, sticky, tardy, immediately your impression of the CEO has changed because he's allowed that. So who's the most important person in that presentation? That's your janitor.
Right. Yes.
Does anybody think of the
Yes.
janitor? They think of the janitor as the lowlife, but they have set up the presentation to which other people are going to receive the company CEO.
Yes. Yes. and they should be compensated accordingly. You
accordingly.
know, we're yes, and they should not be taken advantage of.
No.
And we shouldn't the corporations should not be able to pay people so little that we then as taxpayers supplement the services that they must receive in order to survive. You know,
Yes.
it's corporate welfare at its finest, and it really comes down to the valuing of human beings differently. So
Yes.
like if you believe that intrinsically we have different value, then you're always going to be placing yourself in the hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
You're going to think, okay, I'm here. Everybody who's down here is less
Was
worthy than I
yes.
am
Lower than me. Yeah.
of security, of
Yeah.
comfort, of
Yeah. Yeah.
happiness.
Yeah.
And I am very much going to I'm more than willing to exploit them, talk down to them,
Yeah.
all those things. And anybody who is above me, I'm going to constantly be scrambling for their
Yeah.
attention.
Yes.
I'm going to be constantly grasping and
Kissing
groveling and
butt.
trying to get right and trying to get to that higher level.
Yeah.
Whereas if you really truly believe that we all have equal value,
Yes.
like the homeless person out there is no more or less valuable than I am, and I am no more or less valuable than Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
My skill set may be compensated differently out there in the world, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that I have any less value. And I think if you can just believe that, because that is the truth,
Yes.
and
And
anybody.
that's again where your abundance comes from. The
Yes,
enrichment of who you are, why you are,
yes,
and what you're here to do.
yes,
Where the bank balance matches is that there was one show I did a while ago, and I can't remember the name of the person, but she is trying to organize where the government gives everybody $1,200 a month.
yeah, the universal basic
Yes.
income.
And then that way it's like rent is covered,
Right.
right? That the
Yes,
dignity of knowing that is covered. And then
yes,
anything else I make above that, and any form of wealth or pension or anything like that, the moment you make a cent over a certain amount, they start taking money away from you.
right, right,
But yet
yes,
the cost of living goes up by 30%. So that means you're always going under. You're never managing to stay above. So I think the entire central bank, the entire institution, everything, and quite honestly, entire government needs to be, how when we've got a virus or anything in the computer, we have to reboot and go back to factory.
yes.
I think we have to go
We
back to
need
factory.
we need
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
Sarah, have you read a book called Donut Economics?
I've heard about it, but I haven't read it.
It is really wonderful. It talks about how, the economy, that idea of the economy is just a construct.
Yes.
And it doesn't, and it really has always, it has always been thought of as a science, but
Mm.
in fact, it's really an emotional, societal construct that we created, that really only benefits wealthy people and
Yes.
reduces the rest of us to just numbers on a page. And
Exactly.
and it talks about the idea that we could have an economy that instead of focusing on the endless creation of profits at the cost of everything else,
Yes.
focuses on the quality of our lives and of the planet, um, in a sustainable way, where there's nobody who's hungry, there's no one who doesn't
Equality.
have access to
Mm.
decent healthcare. And it doesn't mean that there's no ability to earn more or do better. It's not straight up communism,
Communism. Mhm.
at all. It's a matter of that we live in a world where we think everything is so scarce, but
Mm.
in fact there are enough resources on this planet where
Yes, there are.
no one has to
Sugar
be
hungry.
hungry, no
No.
one has to be unhoused,
There's so
no
much
one has to.
waste.
Yes, there's an incredible amount of waste, but it doesn't have to be
No.
this way.
No.
And while I have, this, I believe all of this stuff so strongly. In those sort of macro senses, right?
Yes.
but also it can feel so overwhelming because we're like, well, if we can't do anything about that, and it's just this overwhelming thing out there, and the world's going to hell in a handbasket, then why even bother with our own personal life?
Right.
But
But this is my point, is that, I'm only one person, I can't change anything. Yes, you can. You can change
yes,
you. You can change
yes,
your practices. You are a
mm-hmm,
part of the equation. Have you read also
yes.
the book Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson, MD?
No, I
Okay.
will put it on my list.
Highly recommended. It's a metaphorical type book. Two men, two mice around abundance of cheese. One day, the cheese is gone. So the two mice, Sniffy and Scurry, go sniffing out and scurrying around for more cheese. Hem and Ha. Ha is like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm getting hungry. Well, I guess I need to go look for cheese. And Hem is, give me back my cheese. Who am I going to sue? Who am I going to kill? You give me back my cheese. Right? That is a change mindset. And what we're
Yes.
dealing with so much, where we're seeing so much unrest and so many people
Mm,
trying to turn the clock backwards, to the handmaiden's tale, we're seeing that because they're the hems. Give me back, because they are so
right.
scared of the change. Now, if we could all
Yes.
look at change, folks, you change your knickers every day. So why can't you change your thoughts, your practices, your everything else? Because we are explorers by nature. We are
Yes.
discoverers. We are wanderers. We are
Yes.
creatives. We are meant to be in that state of being. We're not
Yes.
meant to be complacent and stuck in fear because we're afraid of the unknown. If we had from the beginning stuck in fear of the unknown, we would still be Neanderthals. In fact, human beings would never ever have evolved.
Right. Right. Because when you live your life from a place of fear and a place of everyone is out to get me, and if I give an inch, they're going to take a mile, and I'm never going to. If you live in that place of constant lack, fear, scarcity, um, your
That's what you're going to
your
have.
life,
That's what you invite.
that is what you invite in.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so you do have control over that. You
Yes.
don't have control over the everyday mechanics of our system, but you do have control over the way that you react to things, and your mindset about your day-to-day decisions.
How do systems change? They change when people
Mm,
change, and the
yes,
and the scale changes, and the system goes, well, there's too many people doing that now. We have to change.
yes, yeah,
You have stepped
yeah,
into conscious financing to
yes,
empower the person, not the financial institutions. The more
yes,
the people that you empower, the more they become part of that solutional scale, less power goes to the financial institutions. Is it a long, arduous, tedious journey? Yes, until we get the scale changed, right?
yes.
But when we start seeing that form of resistance, that form
Mm.
of angst from people, that form of fear and anger, we know already the change is already in
The
place.
tide is turning.
Yes.
It's like there's a teeter-totter,
Yeah.
and more people are wandering over to this other
Yes.
side. And the second that it gets heavier,
Yeah.
you know,
And
it'll tip.
quite honestly, change is here. We have to change.
Yes,
Resistance is futile because, whether you're going to change or not, the change is happening.
that's right. And I always say this too, that the time will pass anyway. You're going to
Yes.
wake up next year,
Yes.
and you can either wake up happier, more confident, more
Purposeful,
more
meaningful.
purposeful,
Yeah.
meaningful,
Hmm.
or you can wake up exactly where you are now or
Miserable.
worse. Um,
Yeah.
yes, and it really only takes small positive decisions,
Mm.
small positive mindset shifts to really create outsized positive results. But the opposite is also true. So small negative, small letting that fear in over and over and over again, not pushing the fear away, sitting in the fear, that will balloon into a very negative
Yes.
long-term situation.
Guaranteed. Where you don't remember
So
even what you're fearful about. I call
that's
that
right.
the Fox News. They take a pimple and make it a volcanic eruption, because the more they've got selling fear, the more people
Mm,
buy the fear, but they're not even quite sure what they've purchased.
That's
But
right.
now they're so fearful, in such a state of fearful, they
Mm,
cannot see any way
yeah.
out of it because they distrust everything.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yep.
we don't always have a choice of what happens to us in life, but we
No.
do have a choice on what we do about it and whom we become because of it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
empower them.
Exactly. 100%.
Tell us about the book.
I wrote this book for the people who we've been talking to. I wrote it for people who feel disempowered in their personal financial world, who feel overwhelmed, who feel, maybe even dumb or stupid when it comes to money. A lot of my
Me?
clients say that. When you think, well,
Clueless.
I don't understand the system, and
Not at all.
I don't know, and
It doesn't make sense.
right. I'm afraid to even look.
Yeah.
So I wrote this book. I wrote the words so that they would be accessible and easy and fun, but I also went a step further and I hired a wonderful illustrator. Her name's Colleen Finn. She lives in Atlanta where I do. And she has illustrated all of the financial planning concepts with anthropomorphic animals. So it looks a bit like a
Mm.
children's book, but it is friendly and
Yes.
accessible. And I'm really excited about it because I think that it if you take the time to sit down and read it, and it's not long, you'll have that confidence that you can start,
Yeah.
that you have the knowledge to start. So I tell you everything you need and nothing you don't. I don't go into some crazy investment scheme. I'm
Right.
very straightforward. I provide some historical context for the reasoning behind things. And I don't offer one size fits all solutions because
Well, not one
your
size.
your financial fingerprint is as unique as your real fingerprints.
Exactly.
So which is why it's so important just to get that basic knowledge so that you can make decisions for yourself, in a way where you're confident about those decisions and you're confident that you've got this.
Yeah.
So I am so excited. It has just come out. It is just now ready to order. So
You've got the book there.
I
Show it
am.
up.
Oh, it's got little tags because there's a couple of things. This is my first print, but you can see on the inside that
Mhm.
it's all illustrated
So
with
whether
these
they're
little
ready or not, this
people.
is a good way of engaging the family. Maybe some of the
Yes,
verbiage is like, okay, I'm not there in that comprehension yet, but
yes,
I'm kind of getting the principle behind it. And as they get older, they get to
yes,
understand it. And especially teenagers who think money grows on
yes.
trees, all right?
Right?
Or
Yes,
that they've got to have
exactly.
that later da 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 or iPhone because everybody else has
Yes,
got it, right? Um,
right.
you're setting the seeding and the groundwork for them to look at money
Yes.
differently.
Yes, and it is important because even if you, and I don't think it really isn't ever too late.
No,
But even if you felt like it was too late for you, it's not too late for your kids.
no,
And you can change their financial trajectory to a positive one that's more positive than what you did. My generation is the first generation where, and your kids too, Sarah, where we we aren't doing better than our parents did financially,
no.
and as a whole. And I think that we can change that for our kids. I think they can do better than we have.
And
And
also, I think that
and
shift for them is that they saw how hard their parents worked for what? For this
Right.
money, this illusion, and then how
Yes.
people were buying the bigger house to keep up with the Joneses, but then we had
Mm,
less going out or less going that because of the mortgage. And
yeah.
this is where I think the decision making is I don't want to burden myself with debt. I actually, and they call it the avocado toast principle. I want to be able to go and afford a $15 avocado toast instead of all my money going into a mortgage and I can't afford to leave the house.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the thing is like the coffee and the
Yeah.
avocado toast is such a small percentage of what people are spending on the
Yeah.
necessities,
Yeah.
right? So when you're like, well, I think that you should give up all pleasure,
Yes.
it's like,
So you
no,
can
we're
afford a
that
house on a mortgage. You're,
right. Like, no, no, we're not gonna do that.
no.
We probably will wind up spending more on necessities than we would have in a past market, in a past economy. But it doesn't mean that you should be constantly depriving
Right.
yourself. You should have a spending plan that gives you permission to spend on little things that make you happy like that. So,
I used to
yeah,
when I kind of was short of my money, but it used to be third, third, third. Third was my
yes,
living expenses, third was
yeah,
my play expenses, and a third was my saving. And,
yeah.
nowadays with rents and things like this, you're more at the half or the two-thirds, right?
Yes,
And
at least.
it doesn't. I don't get it. Like we've just had interest rates go up again, which means gas has gone up and food has gone up. But you want people to build the economy, and this is something I have no understanding of. You're putting up these interest rates to balance the spending, but you need people to spend in order to keep the economy going. And it's like I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me. So
Yes.
clearly there's something I'm missing, right?
Well, they are trying to slow the economy down by causing people not to spend in order to curb inflation. And because the lower the amount of spending, the more the companies have to, quote, lower their prices. But the thing is the overwhelming majority of the inflation that we've seen has been in non-discretionary items, groceries,
Yes.
housing,
Yes. And
and
I
to a
think
certain
they should
extent,
be, those necessities should be exempt from that type of
right,
thing.
and
Yes.
healthcare, right? So
Yes.
if you look at inflation charts where you put a list of things that are discretionary, like things like TVs and clothes, and those things have actually like not really increased in value much, or in price.
I don't know
That
where
that
you
is
are.
the the inflation factor. Well, like if you think about what a big TV was, 5 years ago, 10
True.
years
Yeah.
ago,
Maybe kind of
today
the
it's
new.
like
Yeah.
they're just not, that they haven't astronomically
The
increased
same as food has and
as
necessities
food
has
and
and rent has and
right.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if people, but the thing is rent and healthcare and food are not things that people can necessarily make as much of a choice on.
No.
You're like, you don't have the same, I can give up. I mean, I can stick with my old TV. I can probably go a year, maybe even two, without buying a new piece of clothing. Most of
Right.
us can,
Yes.
if we really had to. Um, but we can't go a year without eating, and we can't go a year without paying our mortgage or our rent. Um,
Oh, we
and
need a
and
car to get around,
yes,
and so when
right.
you've got the gas, I mean, the other day our gas, which was more expensive, we were at what was it, 229,
Hmm.
right?
For a
And
liter.
per
Yeah.
liter, but I go an hour and a half further down the island, and I got it at 177, and
And
it's like
still, it's so expensive still. I
yes.
don't think in liters, I think in gallons. But
Right,
yeah,
yeah,
I
because
mean,
well, that's
here,
liter, which how many
yeah,
how many how many liters to a gallon? I can't remember, but
right.
expensive, very,
It's
very
ex
expensive, which
it
then drives the
is.
cost of everything else. And it's like,
Yes.
why is there not the same emphasis of coming in on the renters and on the gas and on the this and that to keep the costs low so people can afford I mean, we've got
Right.
people they bought a house, they've got, already the mortgage is really high. And now if they remortgage, it's an extra 1,000 or more a month.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, the mortgage rates are absolutely insane
Yeah,
compared to what they have been in the very recent past. And the housing prices have also gone up so drastically.
ridiculously.
And yeah, and so this is what I'm saying, your old the third, a third, a third
Yeah.
was such a practical piece of advice, like 20 years ago.
Yes.
And now if, like,
It's
let's just
unrealistic.
pretend that I have $5,000 a month in income after my taxes have been paid, and you know 3,000 of that, 2,000 of that is going towards my rent, and 1,000 is going towards my food, and another $500 is going towards my transportation. And I have to save somewhere in there, and I have to pay my utilities, and I have to like,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, instead of out of that $5,000 having 1,500 as your savings, right? Or when in 1,500 is your discretion, now you maybe have $500 left over for savings and discretion. And then so you just don't. So I'm very aware that it is not easy today to have a stable financial situation where you feel like you can save aggressively, where you know that your kid's college is taken care of, where you know that a medical expense won't bankrupt you,
Well, and as
here
a
in the States.
pensioner, what we have is we don't have the ability to go out and earn like we used to. Age or
Mm-hmm.
can't get a job or physicality or whatever. I
Right.
mean, I work 7 hours a day at this, but clearly doesn't match the income. Uh, I get 1,800 a month. My
Mm,
expenditure is at least 2,000 a month before food,
right. So
right?
you had to save to make up the difference
That's
of that.
gone. No, the visa. The visa. The visa keeps climbing, and then I pay as little as I can off every month. So the visa, but no, and I'm not the only one in this boat because
No.
everything keeps going up every time you go, oh, you got another, oh, it's gone up, and things aren't going up like a small percentage. They're jumping
Right.
50 or $100 at a time. And it's
Right.
like, but no, the pension doesn't go up like this. So what we're seeing is a crisis of my generation who thought that they, were being frugal, that they had the savings or they could look after their old age. They can't. They can't afford the
Right.
rents anymore. And we're literally seeing them homeless.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and we've had such a shift of culture in that, when you get to be an older person, you don't automatically just go and live with your children.
Nope. Nope.
Our life expectancy is so much longer
Yeah.
than when all of these systems were put in place. So like
Yes.
when the Social Security here in the US was put into place, the average life expectancy was like 63 or 4, and you could take your
Past that.
Social Security at 62, right? So the expectation was that you'd live maybe 1 or 2 years into taking that Social Security. Well, now the time that you take it hasn't really changed, right? You can still take it at 62, but our life expectancy is in the late 70s now. And so and a lot of people are living much longer than
Yes.
that, but they're not working past 60 either,
Exactly.
which they shouldn't have to. But when you're facing, instead of facing 5 years of retirement, when we're now facing 30 years of
Yeah.
retirement or not earning income,
Yeah.
um, I think we really do have to shift. And it may mean having an encore career for
Yeah.
some people. It may mean working at your local grocer, um or doing some consulting work that you would have learned in your previous career. It may mean
Like
moving in with your kid.
the woman I live with, she turns 90 this week. And
Mhm.
before COVID, she was a demonstrator, right? So she would go and do
Mm,
demonstrations. But she was a bona fide accountant before when she
mm,
retired, right?
yeah.
She can't get accountancy job now because she's not up
No.
to date with it and her age.
Right.
And so what is there around for her age? And so that means that she's standing 8 hours a day as a demonstrator, right?
Right.
And all of that. So, there is I have physicality problems, so I can't go and do any of those physical jobs, but I'm doing this.
Right.
But I'm in an
Yes.
industry where people don't pay, right?
Right.
There's a hell of a lot of thing going on with around the podcast thing. So it is very, very difficult for people that are of the older age. And when you look at it, we're a
Yes.
huge amount of the population, right?
Enormous.
We're
Yes.
not. And
Yeah.
so it is like this is again, we need to scratch what has been and
Yes.
reassess. And that
Yes.
means not only the government, but also the financial planners need to be a unified voice and say to the government, look, I'm working on the front lines. This is what
Yes.
has to change. Because if
Yes.
the more they can go la 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 and avoid, nothing's going to get done. And the only thing that's going to get done is when we put pressure on them.
Yes, yes, I 100% I agree. We absolutely need to have a massive overhaul of
Absolutely.
our systems, the way we think about earning income, the way we think about retirement, the way that we think about the function of money in our lives, and the way that we think about capitalism,
Yes.
which people are, they worship at this at the god of capitalism, and capitalism does not work like it should ideally, like any like any economic system. It does not reward people who
No,
work harder.
no.
um
No,
I
it certainly doesn't, and it's still, you talked about the schemes and they get rich and then this and that. They're and for people who are struggling, things. Well, what if I just invested that? I could make that little extra, and then you find it's gone bankrupt, it's gone this, it's gone that, and like, but that
yeah,
money could have done this and could have done that, and but
yeah,
those schemes are out there, but it is true the rich get richer, but
they do.
they get financially richer, but I think they get morally and emotionally and vibrationally and spiritually
Spiritually,
poor.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
they do. And maybe we can all be just a little bit happy about that we have the ability, and that is a personal choice, right?
yes,
We have the ability to be spiritually full,
yes.
and
And despite the
regardless
fact
of
that
our
my
financial
struggles with money, I'm
situation.
far happier being who I am, doing what I'm doing, why I'm doing it.
Yes.
Yes, of course, I'd like the bank balance to be easier, but I would not. I've worked for money where I've not enjoyed what I've done and felt
Yeah.
and felt empty at it. And I will never ever work for
Yes.
that kind of feeling again. And I think
No.
when we've got more and more people stepping into the passion of why they're doing it, that meaningful purpose, that I'll get up and do it for free, even though pay me, right? Because I love it so much. That I think was when we start having more an enriched society and we start reevaluating, right?
Yes.
Instead of
Yeah.
just people working for the job because they've got to put food on the table.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then, like you said earlier, they get trapped.
Yes.
And when you're trapped and you don't have a choice, then you wind up doing things that maybe aren't so morally
Yeah,
savory,
exactly.
like, so
Desperation.
mhm.
Desperation, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yeah. So we don't we want a society where no one is desperate like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it
I think
shouldn't be. Come on. In this time,
no, no,
2023, where we are with knowledge of so much more in light, there is absolutely no way that all of this, quite honestly, crap should be going on. And the only way we're
no.
going to change that, the hems of the world from who move my cheese
Yes,
are not going to change. And so we've
no.
got to stop catering for them. And we've got to support the others that are out sniffing and scurrying around for the food, right? Because
Yes,
that's the only
yes,
way we're going to change is support the change. And those
yes.
that want to change, those that don't want to change, that's their choice. That's their
Right.
choice,
No.
and if
Yep.
and they're going to go by the wayside, like
They
the
can be
dinosaur.
left behind.
They will be
Yep.
left behind. They are being left behind,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I agree.
So whether you're confused about what to do with your money, or whatever you are, the book that you've done is really transcending of any income, right? But you
Yes.
primarily work with the middle class people with at 200, 300, 400,000 a year and how to work with their money. But the book just speaks to everybody and pretty well,
Yes.
kind of all ages, really, from kid up. The earlier you are in teaching your kid about financial planning and money in itself, the value of money, um,
Yes.
and where money can be of value.
Yes.
Right. The
Yes.
more enriched they're going to grow up, the more value they're going to have over that dollar and what it can do, what it's empowered to do, rather than becoming a slave to the money, or God forbid, the do anything for money at any cost, because then those prices
Yes.
are too high. So how do people
Yes.
get hold of your book, love? And how do they reach you? And what are you offering them? Did you have a conversation with them first, or what is it about?
Yeah, yeah. So my one-on-one clients, if if you need a one-on-one financial advisor and you fall into that upper middle income place where you need that coaching, I do have we do an introductory call that's complimentary, to just see if we might be a good fit. For anybody who's interested in my book, it'll be listed on my website, which is financiallab.us. And it'll be available to buy when this recording comes out.
Great. So next week, good. And so financiallab.com, it's all there. Will it be up on Amazon and all of that as well?
It's
No.
not going to be on Amazon, and there's reasons for that,
Right.
that have to do with not wanting to be a
Yes, I
slave
get
to
it.
that
Yeah,
particular monster. It's not to say that it will never be there, but right now it's only going to be available directly through me.
exactly. And you know that again, it's like your kids are, getting to that point of understanding what money is, 7, 8, or whatever the case is, whether they can actually understand the words, but you can talk to the actions of their age, start
Yes,
introducing them to it. And the more you make it a family affair, the easier it is when you say, look, we're pulling our reins in this month or for the next while. And it isn't like, you're depriving us. It's like, oh, okay, I
right,
understand why, because you're understanding what you need to do certain things. You want to go on that holiday next year overseas, then that means we're going to have to sacrifice a little bit this year so we can put money aside for it. And
that's
it doesn't
right,
become more of a punishment. It becomes more of an excitement and anticipation of what is coming up rather than you're taking
right.
away from us. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing it as a team.
Yes.
You know, it's like I've always thought that kids understand so much more than we give them credit
Yeah.
for. And if you're stressed about money, but you're not telling them at
Right.
all, you're hiding
They
it from
feel the
them,
stress and they
they'll
think it's
still
something
feel
to do
it.
with them, right?
Right. So just,
Exactly.
yeah,
Open,
so
honest dialogue according to the age of what
yes.
they are. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. And you have to be able to say no to them and
Yeah,
have them understand the reason behind it. You know,
right.
not just because you're mean and because
No.
you don't want them to have whatever it is that they want.
Yeah. And
It's
don't go,
it's
money
that
doesn't grow on trees because they don't know what the hell you're talking about.
right, exactly. No, don't say all those bad like money mindset words to
Right.
them because you don't want them to have that idea that
No.
that they can't have abundance in their
Yeah.
life. But yeah, I think I have a whole chapter on kids and money in my book too,
Excellent.
just to talk to
Wonderful.
them about the way to sort of think about how to involve them.
The book sounds like a really great way to even introduce how you look at money. For somebody who goes, well, am I ready for you or not? But the book is a great
Yes,
start. And so when they are ready
yes,
for you, they already know who you are, why you are, and what the principle is behind it. But it just sounds like
yes,
just a great book for family and people in general, to kind of, I don't know anything about finance. I don't know what to do. Well, a simple book that can start
yes,
on the path, make it easy because
yes,
I'm completely, financial literate. So, the more people kind of make it something that is, oh, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, I get it. Instead of this hierarchy dumbing you down, making you feel stupid, the more
yes,
people are then going to be more engaged in their finances and what to do. So thank you so
yes,
much
yeah,
for sharing here today, Laura. We've covered a great deal, which is wonderful. And thank you for what you're doing and the fact that it is conscious business, that you are consciously wanting people to be empowered and secure. And it isn't about, you've got to make this kind of money, you've got to manifest this money, you're only important if you have this money. Money is important, but only when you make it work for you, not you're working for
yes,
it. Right?
yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Sarah. This has been so fun and enlightening and enjoyable, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your time.
Right back at you, love. So, folks, remember, money isn't the evil. How we use it, that is where, the question comes into play. But money itself is just simply a tool that helps us survive. And when we use it properly, we invest it properly, we look at it properly, then we actually understand how it can empower our meaningful purpose in life, our journey in life, our enrichment in life, and that the riches don't lie in the dollar sign. They lie in what the money can do to empower our enrichment. Until
Yes.
next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tab at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.